news. Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson indicted in connection with an investigation into last year's jailbreak in New Orleans.
So this indictment comes in connection with a state investigation by Attorney General Liz Murrell's office into last year's mass escape by 10 inmates. The bombshell news came down within just the last hour.
And so we do have team coverage for you right now to break down those charges and what's next in this investigation and the legal process. Let's start with WDSU reporter Jasmine Franklin with the latest. Jasmine?
And Stella, we are still combing through all the new details from this case, as we just heard from the Attorney General's office, Liz Murrell, providing that update right now. We do know Sheriff Hudson has been indicted, 30-count indictment there, facing several charges, including malfeasance in office, conspiracy to commit malfeasance, filing or maintaining false public records, along with a number of other charges. Now, documents show her bond has been set at $300,000, and she's not the only person facing charges. The sheriff's Chief Financial Officer Bianca Brown was also indicted on 20 counts, facing similar charges, including conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice. Now, this comes nearly 1 year after 10 inmates ran out of the Orleans Parish Jail here. Many of those inmates were facing serious charges, and now all have been brought back into custody. But there were many concerns, specifically with the sheriff, regarding a timeline of notifying the public after the escape happened last May, and also how the jailbreak was even possible. Michelle Woodfork is set to take office here as the new sheriff of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office starting on Monday. Reporting live outside of the jail, I'm Jasmine Franklin. Back to you.
Remember the New Orleans jailbreak that had everyone talking? 10 inmates walked out of the Orleans Parish Prison, and the story quickly became one of the most embarrassing law enforcement failures Louisiana had seen in years. Getting all 10 of them back wasn't quick or clean. The last fugitive managed to stay off the radar for roughly 5 months before authorities finally tracked him down, hiding in someone's attic in Atlanta, Georgia. 5 months for a man who was already a convicted murderer, captured not after sentencing, but while waiting for one. He had escaped at one of the most critical points in his legal process and somehow slipped through the cracks long enough to make it to another state entirely. The men who broke out weren't minor offenders. These were individuals facing serious criminal charges, and the fact that they were able to walk out at all raised immediate questions about how the facility was being run. As the investigation expanded, authorities didn't just go after the escapees, they started pulling at every thread. Several women were arrested and charged with helping facilitate the escape. But while those cases moved through the system, investigators kept their eyes on someone bigger, the person at the top, the one ultimately responsible for the jail where all of this happened, Sheriff Susan Hudson. And now the state has made its move. Sheriff Hudson was formally indicted, and she wasn't alone. The office's CFO was also indicted as part of the same case. What makes the timing especially striking is that it all came down just days before Hudson was already scheduled to leave office. She had packed up, she had given her farewell address, her last week on the job was underway, and the incoming sheriff was set to be sworn in that Monday. The residents of Orleans Parish had already made their feelings clear at the ballot box. In the previous election, voters decisively rejected Hudson and threw their support behind Sheriff-elect Michelle Woodfork. The community had spoken. They wanted new leadership, fresh direction, and accountability for what had gone wrong. But the state wasn't willing to let Hudson simply walk out the door and move on. Right on the heels of her farewell speech, the indictment landed, hot and ready, as if it had been waiting for exactly that moment.
Comes just 1 day after Hudson made her farewell address, set to officially vacate that office on Monday.
Yeah, but before that, she is set to make her first court appearance tomorrow.
WDSU reporter Alyssa Gomez picks up our live team coverage. Alyssa, we know that there's an ad hoc judge, former Judge Franz Ziblich, who will hear this case tomorrow.
Yeah, Travers, and I'll tell you, as soon as we got here to the courthouse, all the reporters running inside to try to get a copy of the affidavit. Unfortunately, the clerk's office telling us they do not have that paperwork in hand just yet, so they cannot give us copies and told us to come back tomorrow morning, which we will be here. And the sheriff also expected to be here, as you mentioned, at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Again, like Randy said, this all comes as the sheriff is expected to leave office, even giving her farewell address yesterday after serving for 5 years as the leader of the Orleans Parish Justice Center. In that address, she touched on the jailbreak in May of last year, citing it as one of her most challenging experiences. Today, the Attorney General saying in that indictment that the sheriff did not comply with basic legal requirements. Again, this is a bombshell announcement that just dropped a couple of moments ago, so you can expect us to continue to follow it throughout the next couple of days, probably next couple of weeks, and we will be back out here at the courthouse when those doors open tomorrow morning to get a copy of that affidavit as well. Back to you.
Live right now, former state and federal prosecutor Matt Coleman. Matt, big question here. How do we go from a jailbreak, which some people said was maybe incompetence, to criminal charges now for the sheriff of Orleans Parish?
Well, actually, the malfeasance in office charge actually can charge anyone with failing to perform a duty that they were required to perform. So the statute itself is very wide in scope. In fact, I believe there was another individual's, a sheriff's office employee, actually Sterling Williams, who was charged with one of the same type of offenses and failing to perform various security requirements of his particular role. So we've got the malfeasance as well as the failure to maintain accurate records and filing false public records, as well as the obstruction of justice charge itself. So you've got a wide range of charges. You got 30 counts total against the sheriff and 20 against the CFO. So it looks like there was a thorough investigation, and it's not just one particular incident. It's going to be multiple requirements that were violated, and that's what we expect to see in the indictment when you do see it.
30 criminal counts against the sheriff, 20 criminal counts against the CFO. Those are not small numbers. That is a serious legal storm bearing down on two women who, not long ago, were running one of the most scrutinized law enforcement offices in the country. And here's what makes the CFO situation particularly interesting. When everything was first unraveling, when the escape story was dominating headlines and the pressure was mounting, she was the one out front with the most confidence, composed, unbothered, almost dismissive about the whole thing. It did not seem like a woman who was watching her own legal situation quietly building in the background, because apparently she wasn't watching it at all. Bianca, the CFO, by all appearances, did not see this coming, and honestly, neither did most people follow the story. There was very little public indication that she was even under investigation. No leaks, no rumors circulating, no visible signs that prosecutors had turned their attention toward her specifically. And then 30 counts for the sheriff and 20 for her CFO dropped right at the finish line. Whatever was happening behind closed doors, the state had been building this case quietly, and when they were ready, they moved fast.
Comes to those documents, would this be something along the lines of, because again, a lot of this is just speculation, but is this the handling of those documents, the covering up involving those documents as it relates to the jailbreak?
The obstruction of justice charge and the failure to maintain accurate records and or filing false records can actually be altering a record and filing some false record, or withholding the filing of a document and a record that you were required by law to file. So again, that particular charge, again, like the malfeasance in office charge, is very wide in scope, and a number of different factors could go into that particular violation.
And Matt, real quickly, so if convicted, what kind of jail time or penalty are we looking at?
All these are felonies, every one of them, from the malfeasance 0 to 10 years up to 20 years in prison, 10 years on the obstruction charge, depending on what the underlying or predicate offense would be. So they're all felonies. There's no mandatory minimum on any of these. And obviously the sheriff and the CFO, if they were convicted, would be first offenders. So that would be up to the district judge that would have that case, but they're all felonies.
All right, Matt Coleman, stick around. You're no stranger to prosecuting high-profile cases. You prosecuted former Mayor Ray Nagin. Stick around. We're going to come back to you in just about 25 minutes here. We have a lot more questions to get to on this major story.
Now, the prosecutor behind this case is no stranger to high-profile targets. This is the same man who brought down former New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin. For those who may not remember the name, Ray Nagin was thrust into the national and international spotlight during Hurricane Katrina, one of the most devastating natural disasters in American history, which struck New Orleans over 2 decades ago. His handling of the crisis made him a household name. But years later, it was corruption, not the storm, that defined the end of his legacy. Federal prosecutors built a case against him, secured a conviction, and a judge handed down a 10-year federal prison sentence. He ended up serving just under 6 years before being released on home confinement during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then came Mayor LaToya Cantrell, who became a recurring subject in conversations about New Orleans leadership. Cantrell was indicted on her way out of office as well, with federal charges hitting alongside a separate scandal involving her relationship with a police officer. It was, to put it simply, a lot. And now history appears to be repeating itself. Sheriff Hudson, indicted alongside her CFO just days before she was set to walk out the door after voters rejected her re-election bid. 30 criminal counts stemming from the state's investigation into that deeply embarrassing 10-inmate escape that unfolded nearly a year ago in 2025. New Orleans, same pattern, different faces. Let's get into it.